And I'm going to broadcast live. I'm going to count down unless someone tells me.
One moment,
in
Alan.
5.
I'm sorry. Can you project the
Okay,
instructions?
no problem.
This slide 2 right now.
Sure.
Good to go.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay. If everyone is ready, I'm going to broadcast in 5, 4, 3, 2. If everyone is ready, I'm going to broadcast in 5, 4, 3, 2. If everyone is ready, I'm going to broadcast in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. We will be starting the Starrett Lehigh and Terminal Warehouse Project public scoping meeting just around the 2 o'clock hour. Thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you shortly. Good afternoon and welcome. You are tuning in to the remote public scoping meeting for the Starrett, Lehigh and Warehouse Terminal Proposal, seeker number 21 DCP 103M. Next slide. My name is Olga Abinator, and I'm the director of the New York City Department of City Planning Environmental Assessment and Review Division, otherwise known as EARD. Stephanie Shalhoub, Deputy Director of EARD, will co-host today's meeting along with me. And in the event of any technical challenges on my end, Stephanie will take over this meeting on my behalf. We truly appreciate everyone's patience as we continue to adjust to this public remote meeting format. I do want to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to attend today's remote meeting. I also would like to acknowledge that technology such as what we're using today is imperfect. However, it is an invaluable tool that allows the critical land use and environmental review processes to proceed while keeping all of us safe during this public health crisis. I would also like to emphasize that we will hear from everyone who wishes to speak today, and this meeting will remain open until we have heard from all speakers who have signed up to provide testimony. We also welcome written comments and testimony through Thursday, January 21st, 2021. And we do provide written comments the same attention and consideration as comments provided live at today's meeting. Next slide. We will now proceed to the public scoping meeting for the Starrett, Lehigh and Terminal Warehouse. For our records, the seeker application number for this proposal is 21 DCP 103M. Today's date is January the 11th, and the time is now approximately 2:02 p.m. Next slide. I'm Olga Abinator once again, the Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division at the New York City Department of City Planning, and I'll be chairing today's public scoping meeting. The Department of City Planning is acting on behalf of the City Planning Commission as the lead agency for this proposal's environmental review. As lead agency, the department oversees the preparation and completion of an environmental impact statement, or EIS, for the Starrett, Lehigh and Terminal Warehouse proposal. Next slide. Joining me today are several of my colleagues from the Department of City Planning. As I mentioned previously, Stephanie Shalhoub, Deputy Director of EARD, joins us today. Edith Suchen, Director of the Manhattan office at DCP, and Eric Botsford, Deputy Director in the Manhattan office, are also in attendance. Sylvia Lee, Team Leader in the department's Manhattan office, is also in attendance, as are Annabelle Meunier, Team Leader in EARD, and Anthony Howard, who will be project managing the environmental review on behalf of EARD. I'll also know that Nabila Malik, Project Manager for Starrett, Lehigh and Terminal Warehouse in the Manhattan office, also joins us today. And I will also mention that during today's remote meeting, we are joined by several colleagues at the Department of City Planning and several colleagues from the environmental consulting team. Thanks to everyone for assisting us with this remote public meeting format. Next slide. Together, we are here to receive your comments on the draft scope of work for the Draft Environmental Impact Statement, or DEIS, for the Starrett, Lehigh and Terminal Warehouse proposal. The draft scope of work identifies all of the subjects that will be analyzed in the upcoming DEIS and also explains how the subjects will be studied. The draft scope of work is available on the Department of City Planning website. Next slide. The purpose of today's public scoping meeting is to allow for public participation in the preparation of the DEIS at the earliest stage possible. Toward that end, the department will have an opportunity today to receive comments on the draft scope of work from elected officials, leaders from government agencies, leaders from community boards, and members of the general public. We also welcome written comments on the draft scope of work. And as I mentioned earlier, and I will continue to remind folks throughout this meeting, our written comments can be submitted through Thursday, January 21st, 2021. Next slide. At the end of the written comment period, the Department of City Planning as lead agency will review all comments, those heard today, and all written comments that we have received. After carefully reviewing all comments, the department will decide what changes, if any, need to be made to the draft scope of work, and then a final scope of work will be issued. It is the final scope of work that will serve as a basis for preparing the DEIS. Next slide. Today's scoping meeting marks the formal beginning of the environmental review process for the Starrett, Lehigh, and Terminal warehouse proposal. I'll note that no decisions will be made today regarding the draft scope of work or environmental review. Today's purpose and the purpose of our meeting is to allow for the public to provide comments about the draft scope of work and to allow the department to listen to those comments. It's important to us that all voices be heard today. Next slide. Let me speak now to the format and structure of today's meeting, which will be divided into 3 parts. During the first part of today's meeting, the applicant team will provide a brief overview describing the Starrett, Lehigh, and Terminal Warehouse proposal. Allison Ruddock, a representative from the environmental consulting firm VHV, will then provide a short summary of the environmental review and the draft scope of work. During the second part of today's meeting, we will be open to receiving testimony or comments on the draft scope of work from elected officials, government agencies, and leaders from the local community board. During the third and final part of today's meeting, the department will receive comments and testimony from the general public. Today's meeting will end only when everyone who has signed up to provide testimony has had a chance to be heard. Next slide. Onto a few logistics for today's scoping meeting. The protocol that I will read out is intended to ensure that everyone has a chance to speak, and again, that all voices are heard. If you do wish to provide testimony and plan to access this meeting using a computer or tablet or smartphone, please remember to register online through the City Planning Scoping Meeting for Starrett, Lehigh, and Terminal Warehouse page of the NYC Engage portal, accessible at www.nyc.gov/NYC Engage, or ENGAGE. A link to join us today and to provide your testimony will be emailed to you after you have completed the registration process on the NYC Engage portal. We will then add you to our speakers list. Next slide. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you will be granted temporary speaking privileges by Department of City Planning staff. Please listen closely for your name to be called. Once your name has been called, we will help unmute your microphone and you will be asked to provide your remarks. To allow us to hear from everyone who wishes to speak, we ask that members of the general public limit remarks to 3 minutes. To assist with this, a 3-minute countdown clock will run on the screen. If you are participating online, at the 3-minute mark, your time will expire. And at that time, I will ask that you conclude your remarks. Please also note that your testimony will be verbal only, and we will be able to hear you, but we will not be able to see you. Next slide. An additional note of instruction to those of you joining us by telephone today. If you wish to provide testimony via telephone, please select *9 when prompted. Please listen for me to call out the last 3 digits of your phone number, and at that point, you will be given the temporary ability to share your testimony. You must press *6 to unmute your telephone, and at that point, we will be able to hear you speak. When your testimony is complete or your 3 minutes have expired, whichever comes first, please press *6 again to mute yourself. We would like to encourage dial-in participants who wish to provide testimony to register via telephone using the dial-in participant hotline instructions. And please note that muting and unmuting registered speakers may take a moment as we are continuing to adjust to this remote meeting format. Next slide. Once again, a note on time limits. Speakers from the general public have 3 minutes to provide testimony. There are a few exceptions to the time limits. Elected officials, members of government agencies, and leaders from community boards are given the courtesy of jumping to the front of the queue and they are not time limited. A note to our live stream viewers. If you are viewing us on live stream, and if you decide that you'd like to provide testimony verbally here today, please be mindful of potential background noise during your testimony. Make sure that the live stream is muted when you begin your testimony to avoid hearing an echo. Next slide, please. I'll also note that if anyone does not wish to provide testimony today, kindly stream this meeting using the live stream links included within the NYC Engage portal and Department of City Planning websites, given attendance capacity constraints on Zoom. A reminder that we will accept written comments through Thursday, January 21st. If you wish to provide written testimony, it may be mailed or emailed. If you'd like to mail your comments to us, you may send them to the New York City Department of City Planning, Environmental Assessment and Review Division. Attention, Olga Abinator. Our address is 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. Comments may also be emailed to 21 DCP 103M_DL@planning.nyc.gov. Next slide, please. If you miss our instructions, please be sure to visit www.nyc.gov/NYCENGAGE for instructions on how to participate and provide testimony. At this time, we will move on to the first part of the public scoping meeting. Elise Wagner, Caroline Harris, and Allison Ruddock will provide a presentation of the proposed project and the environmental review's draft scope of work. Next slide. And next slide.
Good afternoon. My name is Elise Wagner, and I'm Land Use Counsel to the owner of the Terminal Warehouse building. During this portion of the scoping meeting, the applicant team will provide you with a brief presentation regarding the Starrett Lehigh Terminal Warehouse rezoning. As you see from this agenda, we will first identify the SECRA lead agency and the applicant team. Then we will describe the existing conditions in the project area and the proposed actions. And then we will summarize the SECRA process. During the final portion of the scoping meeting, there will be an opportunity for public comments. Next slide. The SECRA lead agency for this rezoning is the New York City Department of City Planning on behalf of the New York City Planning Commission. The applicants are RXR SL Owner LLC, the owner of the Starrett Lehigh building, and Terminal Fee Owner LP, the owner of the Terminal Warehouse building. I am Elise Wagner of Kramer Levin, counsel to the owner of the Terminal Warehouse building, and Caroline Harris of Goldman Harris LLC is counsel to the owner of the Starrett Lehigh building. VHB is the environmental planning and engineering firm for this rezoning and will be represented by Allison Ruddock. Next slide. During this part of the presentation, I will summarize the existing conditions in the project area. Next slide. Both of the buildings that are the subject of this rezoning occupy their entire block and are larger than permitted by the existing zoning. They are located in an M23 zoning district where permitted uses include manufacturing and certain commercial uses. Existing tenants in the buildings include offices, retail, design firms, and restaurants. Next slide. The two buildings are located in the middle of the circle you see on the screen between West 26th and 28th Streets and 11th and 12th Avenues. As I said, they're located in an M23 district, but they are not located within the special West Chelsea district that you see shown in gray on the screen. Next slide. Both buildings are within the West Chelsea Historic District, shown in the light orange, and the Starrett Lehigh building is an individual landmark shown in the darker orange. Next slide. The owners of both buildings are undertaking upgrades that are being pursued irrespective of the rezoning in an effort to create a connection between these buildings and Hudson River Park to the west, the High Line to the north and east, Hudson Yards to the north, and West Chelsea to the east. On the left, you see the Starrett Lehigh building, where the owner is undertaking a ground floor activation project, including a new front door on 11th Avenue and a food court. They are also undertaking renovations to the lobby, installing new windows and creating a new loading dock on 12th Avenue. All required approvals have been obtained from the Landmarks Preservation Commission. On the right-hand side of your screen, you see the terminal warehouse. There, the owner is undertaking a full renovation of the building. They are reallocating floor area to create smaller penthouse floors on the western end of the building. There will be no increase in floor area. The owner is eliminating self-storage uses in the building and increasing offices and creative uses. They are also creating 5 internal loading docks. All work has been approved by the Landmarks Preservation Commission. And as I said, the work that I have just described related to both buildings is work that is being done irrespective of the rezoning. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Caroline Harris, who will describe the proposed actions.
Good afternoon. Next slide, please. I am Caroline Harris, counsel to the applicant, who is the owner of the Starrett Lehigh building. As an overview of the proposed actions, we are proposing to facilitate a broader range of uses in the buildings in order to prepare them for the next generation of New York City's economy, enabling flexibility to foster the future of manufacturing and retail uses and change workplaces. The proposed actions would also integrate the project area into the fabric of the surrounding area. There would be proposed changes in the underlying zoning as well, from an M23 to an M24 district, which would not change the uses allowed in the manufacturing district, but would increase the floor area ratio from a 2 to 5 and alter the height and setback regulations so that both buildings would be more zoning compliant, but they would still not fully comply with the zoning regulations regarding bulk. The proposed actions would not, however, result in any new exterior construction. Next slide, please. The proposed actions with regard to the map would be to extend the special West Chelsea district, and the new sub-area K would be created in the special West Chelsea district regulations, which is a text change. And the second zoning map action would be to rezone the project area from M23 to M24. As you can see on the next slide, the left image on the slide changes the project area to M24 as proposed on the zoning map, which would also be highlighted in gray as an extension of the special West Chelsea district. On the right side of this slide, you can see how the special district map would be amended in the text of the West Chelsea district. We would be adding sub-area K, as you can see, to the West Chelsea district map. Next slide. The zoning text amendments that are being proposed would expand the as-of-right uses through amendments of the West Chelsea district regulations. These new uses include most community facility and commercial uses, with some exceptions. For example, there would be no residential use, no hotel use, and no other sleeping accommodations permitted. But academic institutions and medical offices would be allowed. There would be limitations on the percentage of each building allowed for this use group K set of uses. This approach to the use regulations would make sure that manufacturing uses allowed in M2 districts would continue to be allowed, and opening up the possibility of synergistic relationships among manufacturing uses, research and development that may take place in academic institutions, new creative businesses, and retail stores that would now be allowed that could feature products made or developed in the buildings. The permitted floor area use for use group, the permitted floor area for use group K uses would be limited. The maximum floor area of the use group K uses would be 25% of the floor area in each of the buildings. Conversions to uses permitted in the M2 or M23 or now M24 district shall not count towards the 25% cap. Use group 10A uses would be limited to 15% of the floor area of either building. This would limit, for example, department stores from being a much larger percentage of the building. Next slide. So the proposed actions, the other zoning, include other zoning text amendments. They are to allow unenclosed sidewalk cafes on West 27th Street between 11th Avenue and the Joe DiMaggio Highway, to adopt a chairperson certification to establish the maximum number of required berths for each building. In lieu of the chairperson certification, we might adopt a text amendment that would waive loading requirements for changes of use. This alternative mechanism would not alter the proposed project, analysis framework, or the methodologies identified in the environmental assessment statement, positive declaration, and draft scope of work for this proposal. Finally, the amendments would remove certain restrictions on the angle and height of signs within 15 feet of the corner, where on the Starrett Lehigh building, there's a chamfered corner for the building. And yet the underlying signage regulations would remain in place. Next slide. I turn this discussion over to Allison Ruddock from VHB.
Thanks, Carrie. Hello, I'm Allison Ruddock with VHB, the environmental consulting firm that prepared the draft scope of work and will be preparing the draft environmental impact statement on behalf of city planning. As noted on this slide, the city's environmental quality review process helps decision makers consider discretionary actions by evaluating the potential environmental consequences of those actions. Under SEEKR, a framework for analysis is set forth, and that's detailed in the draft scope of work, in which the no action condition, which is if the proposed actions are not approved, is compared with the with action condition if the proposed actions are approved. And this is called the reasonable worst case scenario. The draft scope of work sets forth the analysis areas and the methodologies for how those analysis areas will be studied. Comments received at this meeting and through the end of the comment period will be incorporated into a final scope, as Olga described, and that final scope will guide preparation of the draft EIS. There'll be another public hearing after the draft EIS is published. I'll provide an overview of the overall EIS framework, which, consistent with SEEKR, will be to analyze the potential increment between the no action and with action conditions, the reasonable worst case scenario. Next slide. Starting with the no action condition, that's the future without the proposed actions. If the proposed actions were not approved, the two buildings will continue to be tenanted with uses that are allowed as of right within the existing zoning district. In the with action condition, or the future with the proposed actions, the two buildings would be allowed to include additional uses not currently allowed under existing zoning at this location, as Carolyn described. These uses fall into the broader categories of destination retail use, academic space, and medical office space. For purposes of a conservative analysis, the draft scope of work set forth a reasonable worst case development scenario that maximizes the amount of destination retail that could be developed over the long term at the site, as well as assumptions for academic and medical office space. This reasonable worst case scenario is assumed to total 446,331 square feet of destination retail space, approximately 267,000 square feet of academic space, and just shy of 30,000 square feet of medical office space. To allow for these uses, there's assumed to be a reduction in commercial office space of about 424,000 square feet, local retail space of 136,000 square feet, and manufacturing and storage space of about 183,000 square feet. These numbers do not reflect a specific development proposal for the sites, but they've been developed for the purposes of assessing the potential impact during environmental review. And it has been mentioned in the with action condition, there's no exterior construction at either building since the proposed actions are really specific to the proposed uses at the site. Next slide, please. So based on this, the environmental assessment statement in the technical screening section and then in the draft scope of work sort of communicate together to identify several technical areas for further analysis in the environmental impact statement. And those areas for analysis are historic and cultural resources, hazardous materials, transportation, air quality, noise, public health, and neighborhood character. Next slide. And then, consistent with EISs prepared under SEEKR, the EIS will also include a mitigation chapter. If any significant adverse impacts are identified, mitigation measures will be explored. Alternatives, which will include a no action alternative, as well as if there are unmitigated impacts that cannot be, or if there are impacts that cannot be mitigated, a no unmitigated impact alternative to explore what that might look like. And then summary chapters that are included in every EIS, unavoidable significant adverse impacts, should any be identified, growth-inducing aspects of the project, irreversible and irretrievable commitment of resources, and an executive summary. Next slide, please. So I'll turn it now back to Olga at City Planning to start the comment period.
Thank you, Allison. At this time, we will move on to part 2 of the public scoping meeting. At this point, we will open the floor to testimony from elected officials, community board leaders, and members of government agencies. If our production team could kindly project the slide with instructions, I think number 37, that would be super helpful. Thank you. I will note that if speakers experience any technical issues that prevent them from sharing testimony today, we will pause, try again, and then move on to the next speaker to allow for troubleshooting to happen in the background. We will make sure to call your name again at a later time during today's meeting to give you the opportunity to be heard. If this happens, please make sure to visit the How-To Guides page on the NYC Engage website for assistance. If you've called in and continue to experience issues providing testimony, hang up the phone, dial 646-588-8656, and you'll be prompted for a meeting ID and a password. The meeting ID is, as is shown below on my screen, 934-0547-9761, and the meeting password is the number 1. Thank you all, and let me now call on our speakers who have joined us for this segment of the public scoping meeting. It appears that we have 2 speakers joining us for this segment, and they are Manhattan Community Board Land Use Subcommittee Co-Chair Betty McIntosh, who will be joining us first, and Manhattan Community Board 4 Land Use Subcommittee Co-Chair Paul Devlin, who will be speaking after Ms. McIntosh. Betty McIntosh, we are ready for your testimony. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we're able to hear you now.
Oh, okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I've designed my remarks for 2 minutes because that's what I thought we would have. So I'm going to proceed with my short version of testimony, but we will have a community board letter, full letter coming to you all probably by the end of this week. So I'm co-chair of the Chelsea Land Use Committee of Manhattan Community Board 4, and I will be speaking about some of the board's comments about the draft scope for the Starrett, Lehigh, and Terminal Warehouse, DEIS. Could I just ask, I under all circumstances, my video, my visual doesn't occur here? Is that
Correct.
right?
We are
Okay.
able to hear you, but we will not be able to see you
Okay.
today.
Just double checking.
Thank you.
Community Board 4 is very pleased that this proposal would expand the Special West Chelsea District to include the 2 blocks that these buildings occupy. Over the last 15 years, Community Board 4 has advocated for this expansion. And I have several comments from Community Board 4 on transportation issues. The final scopes analysis of anticipated visitors should include studies of pedestrians and bike and bus, subway, and taxi users. It should also include analyses of the use of the 7th Avenue and the 8th Avenue subways at West 23rd Street stops. The study area should be expanded to include these locations and the corresponding streets and avenues. Also, we strongly recommend that street trees be added as a scope topic. There is a continuing pedestrian safety issue on West 26th Street between 11th and 12th Avenues because parked trucks extend into that street, blocking the sidewalk on the north side of West 26th Street. Pedestrians are forced to cross West 26th Street mid-block to the south side, creating a dangerous situation. Community Board 4 has raised this issue for several years. We have suggested a marked mid-block pedestrian crosswalk, a solution which was rejected by DOT. We have also suggested that signs could be installed, redirecting pedestrians from West 26th Street and encouraging them to walk on West 27th Street, a much safer route. The final scope should include this topic with analyses for solutions, and perhaps we could revisit DOT. Thank you, and I appreciate your listening.
Thank you for your comments, and we do look forward to receiving your written testimony. Our next speaker is Paul Devlin from Community Board 4. Please unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, as you know, I'm Paul Devlin. I'm co-chair with Betty of the Chelsea Land Use Committee of Community Board 4. The Chelsea Land Use Committee reviewed this application at our December meeting, and we held a public hearing on the application at our January 6th, 2021 full board meeting. The proposed zoning text amendment is to add these 2 blocks to the Special West Chelsea District, which was originally adopted in 2005. CB4 had requested that these 2 blocks, in addition to others north and south of these blocks, be included in the original creation of the district. And as Betty noted, we remain consistent in our support of these blocks being a part of the district. The goals of the West Chelsea District are to facilitate an appropriate integration of industrial, commercial, and residential uses in the area surrounding the reuse of the High Line. These 2 blocks between the High Line and the Hudson River play an important role in linking these uses in our community. I'd like to address 2 specific areas of concern within this draft scope: historical and cultural resources and community neighborhood character. First, both of these buildings are located within the West Chelsea Historic District and play a significant role in the history of the area. We at CB4 have worked with the applicant on issues before the LPC with much success. One position we have consistently taken is that we are seeking the reinstallation of 2 parapets on the east facade of the Terminal Warehouse building. The final scope for the draft EIS should acknowledge this requested restoration and not include any measures that would prevent it. Second, as to community character, the proposed ZTA would allow commercial uses for use group 10A, which allows destination retail. The applicant is proposing a maximum of 15% of total floor area in group 10A. These large-scale retail uses will alter the unique character of West Chelsea. The draft scope's reasonable worst-case scenario shows the possibility of over 440,000 square feet of destination retail. This would mean that even with the 15% cap, this proposed text amendment would allow approximately 5 large destination retailers on 2 blocks. An analysis at that level is likely to produce a report showing that the negative impacts won't be tenable for our community. Therefore, we are requesting that an alternative be studied that limits use group 10A to 10% of total floor area to show the impact of fewer of these big box stores and the mitigation necessary even still to overcome such an influx of destination retailers. To echo Betty, CB4 will submit a full letter before the end of this week with more details about our position on the application. As always, we appreciate your hard work on these issues and the impact on our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. All right, this concludes the second segment of today's public scoping meeting. Now, at this time, we normally proceed to part 3 of the public scoping meeting, where members of the general public are able to speak for up to 3 minutes. I'll note now that my colleagues are telling me that we currently have no public speakers signed up to speak at this time. I'm not sure if anyone has called in to our meeting today, but I'd like to take a moment in a brief minute to open the floor to anyone who may have called in to today's meeting and ask those callers to please dial *9 in the event that they have called in and they would like to provide testimony. I will check now with my colleagues to see if anyone is calling in and also would like to provide testimony. I am hearing from my colleagues in real time that there are no live-in speakers who wish to provide testimony or who have joined us via telephone to begin with. Okay, it looks like we are moving right along. Since it does appear that there are no speakers at this time who have registered to provide testimony or any callers who would like to do the same, I'm going to take a brief moment, approximately 5 minutes, to allow anyone who might have joined us a little bit late to take a moment to complete the online testimony registration process before we move ahead with the next part of the meeting. The time is approximately 2:37 p.m. At 2:42 p.m., we will reconvene and see if anyone has joined the public scoping meeting and would like to once again provide testimony at this time. Thank you all, and we will be seeing you in approximately 5 minutes. Good afternoon and welcome back. You are tuning into the remote public scoping meeting for the Starrett Lehigh and Terminal Warehouse proposal. For our records, this proposal seeker number is 21 DCP 103M. My name is Olga Abinator. I'm the Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division at the New York City Department of City Planning. And we are currently on part 3 of the public scoping meeting, where we generally invite members of the public to provide testimony on a draft scope of work for a 3-minute time period. At this stage, we are hearing from our colleagues at the Department of City Planning that no one has registered to provide testimony today. And if no one else wishes to speak at this time, we will move ahead to close the public scoping meeting today. I'll note once again that for anyone who may have experienced any technical difficulties providing testimony today, recall that submitting written testimony is an option for you, and you may select this hearing, Starrett Lehigh and Terminal Warehouse Project Public Scoping Meeting, on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal at www.nyc.gov/NYC Engage. Or you may choose to submit your comments through the Department of City Planning. At this point, I'd like to ask our production team to show the slide that provides instruction on how to contact us via email or via mail, should you choose to provide written testimony in that way. Thank you very much. Written comments, again, will be accepted through the close of business on January 21st. Comments can be either emailed at 21 DCP 103M_DL@planning.nyc.gov, or you may provide your comments in writing over regular mail at, and mail us at New York City Department of City Planning, attention Olga Abinator, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, 10271. I'll note now that the time is 2:44 p.m. and today's public scoping meeting is now closed. Thank you to everyone who has participated and helped us run a scoping meeting remotely today. Have a great day.